will request Mohit Shaw sir to introduce Anurag Singhal sir in front of the students.
Hello everyone. We have moved from the phase of lockdown 1 to lockdown 4, almost there. And a new concept has been introduced in the country called Atmanirbharta. This we have been practicing in our college from day one, before our respected Prime Minister actually said it. Because through these webinars, we are not dependent on any infrastructure support from the country. We are self-sufficient and trying to boost our learning with such learned speakers and our dynamic team. So whether it's a webinar, event, competition, Bhawanipur is already on a roll. Coming back to the first speaker for today's webinar, Anurag Singhal is a Zavarian and got the Nihil Ultra certificate for the best overall performance in Department of Commerce, completed Chartered Accountancy with All India Rank 22, completed a PGPX 1-year full-time MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, working in FP&A and corporate strategy verticals of major Indian conglomerate for 12 years now. He has a popular YouTube channel for youth on the career theme, mentorcajobportal.com, India's first recruitment portal for chartered accountants. Thank you, sir, for being here today, and we are looking forward to a wonderful deliberation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for the kind words. So I'm going to speak about perspectives related to working capital management in industry. So all of you know that in academics, working capital life was very simple, right? Current assets minus current liabilities. So current assets would mean debtors plus inventory, and current liabilities would be payable. So the question would have given us that the debtors is 15 days of sales and inventory is 22 days of sales, and maybe creditors is 7 days of sales. So you have a net working capital cycle, also known as C2C cash conversion cycle. But the challenge comes in real life when you suddenly realize that it is this number of days in the cash to cash, which is also known as the cash conversion cycle, which becomes the challenge. That, for example, as a CFO of a company, for this year your target will be, so example, you are an automobile retail company and you are based out of India. Your challenge for this year will be that if your company's entire cash conversion cycle is 30 days, how can you bring it to 28 days more in alignment with the industry? So that's how this whole thing starts happening. So this becomes increasingly very, very interesting as to what...
So if you look at the data, and it becomes very interesting in terms of what you can do and what are the best practices that are adopted in industry. So this is essentially working capital metrics, which is there by... So this is a study by EY again, which talks about these debtors and inventory and days payable. So basically you have this cash conversion cycle, which is days of sale outstanding plus days of inventory minus days of payable. So it is 55 plus 76 minus 57 comes to 75, which is this entire, and DSO minus DPO. You'll see that a lot of these companies are actually having a better credit that they can extract from their suppliers as compared to the credit that they give to their customers. So in Asia, we have like a -1. In Australia, New Zealand, it is -4. India, again, it becomes -4. But look at Japan. Japan gives, their company gives a lot more credit to their customers as compared to the credit they get from their suppliers. So it apparently appears that Japanese companies give credit more and get credit less. And if in the same data, if you were to exclude oil and gas and mining, you see this from -4, it becomes +6. That means what? In the oil and gas and the mining industries, you essentially have a practice where you don't give credit to your customers. You get money advance, and that happens in Aditya Birla Group where we work, where the customer has to do an RTGS of some 3 crore rupees into our bank account, and only then we dispatch the iron ore to them. Now, this is very interesting. So countrywide, this changes. This also changes as per industry. So you saw that this host of industries from steel, specialty chemicals. So as a CFO, as the head of the finance function in the real life, you'll have all these metrics, and now you'll have to understand that where does your company lie as compared to the industry average. So for example, if you're Hindustan Unilever, how does your working capital practice compare with P&G or Godrej or Dabur, etc. And in fact, you can do a very interesting ratio analysis and see that how do this simple thing like this cash to cash vary across different. So if it's a Calcutta based FMCG company like Imami as compared to a UK based MNC like HUL, does that change? It's something which is worth a lot of interest. So what do we do in real life when we are supposed to optimize our cash flows? We basically, what we do is that we have a 13-week rolling forecast, cash flow forecast prepared, and what we do is that every now and then, and this is a practice in cash flow where you have to look at your receipts and payments basis which business line. So for example, if I am Tata Steel, I will have 3-4 business lines like long products, flat products, wires. So across each business line, each jurisdiction, so India, Thailand, Singapore and Europe, I will prepare the cash flow forecast so that I am very much well aware that how much is the cash required in the business. So for example, COVID, which has suddenly happened. So what will be the most logical outcome of COVID? Now that things are still okay, we are all shut at home. Once we start, a lot of people are not going to pay because they are going to say that my business is not there since the last 2 months. So then you will have to do a various analysis of your cash flows and understand the reasons for the variation, whether it is due to timing or if it is permanent. So for example, if people are not paying up, is it only that this is because of the COVID crisis that they're going to pay like a month later, or is it permanent where this person has now been on the brink of bankruptcy, he's going to file for insolvency very soon. So then it becomes a permanent thing, not just a timing factor. Then you could look at your working capital strategy holistically. For example, as a businessman, you would say that, okay, my suppliers, instead of 30 days, I'm going to pay you in 90 days. But the challenge then becomes that this is going to impact the quality of their service. This is going to impact your inventory levels, and then the quality of service to customers is going to change, because if they are not going to supply on time because you started paying them in 90 days instead of 30 days, this vendor will say, okay, I don't want to work with you. So for example, take the case of a college which will say that, okay, I'm taking stationery from a vendor. Now I'm going to pay in 90 days or 120 days because I want to make my working capital better. The vendor will say, I will not supply to this college. I will supply to some other college. In that case, therefore, you will have to make a trade-off that, okay, in a quest to make your working capital better, you can't break relationships with your suppliers. And most businesses are able to drive improvement and unlock cash from at least one, if not two areas of the working capital, which is basically trade receivables, inventory, and trade payables. Now, for trade payables, what can you do? You can look at processes that, am I invoicing my clients in a timely manner as per the contract terms? So it's like the moment I make a dispatch, am I able to make the invoice? So for example, I give an example of my wife who runs this CAJobportal.com. So our point of billing is the candidate joining. So the team has a strict responsibility area, is that the moment a candidate joins, within 3 days, you have to raise the bill, because your customer is going to count the payment period from the day the invoice is raised. So if you lose time between the candidate joining and the invoice raising, you are losing out on your working capital. So as per the contract terms, please ensure that you raise your invoices in a timely manner. And then robust credit controls. It should not happen that any XYZ is being given credit which is beyond the limits. Then you got to use analytics to understand customers' payment behavior. So typically you will understand that, okay, Mohit, whenever I give him credit for 2 months, he generally pays in 3.5 months. So he has this habit of delaying things by 6 weeks. So this is the customer payment behavior. Over a period of time, you can build analytics, and then with the help of that analytics, you can take proactive measures that, okay, in the contract itself, I will build penalties for delayed payments. And then there is something called receivables factoring programs. So what happens is that I have a customer who is going to pay me after 90 days. That receivable is established. The moment I make an dispatch and the quality check is approved at their end, now I can go to the bank and say, hey, Tata Steel is going to pay me after 90 days. Can you pay me the present value of that amount today, because I need that in my working capital? And that is something called receivables factoring, and it brings more rigor in the cash collection process. And then So this was about DSO, days sales outstanding, debtors, days of sales outstanding. Then you could have DIO, days of inventory outstanding. So if I have like obsolete stock in my business, and which has been like since posterity, there would be some items. So example, you go to a shop in Stand Road, and if you actually analyze the go down, you'll find that some items are there which are non-moving since ages. So why not look at those slow-moving, non-moving, obsolete stock and just discard it instead of letting it block your working capital? Even if you were to sell it as scrap, but at least it is not blocking your inventory. So then you need to examine your production requirements. For example, if you are Maruti, so you know that, okay, I'm going to make like 700 cars in this month. So then back to back, how much is my SKUs, means which is the strategic stock keeping units, which are known. So I want brakes and assemblies and gearboxes, so many things. So back to back, can I do that planning? And I will avoid tying up cash in unproductive inventory. And that is why if you look at auto companies, Toyota had introduced this concept of just in time. So they have their vendors around their mother plant, so that there is limited time which is required for them to supply. So the company is going to raise an indent and the vendor is expected to supply in 3 days. And then in terms of your DPO, your days of payment outstanding, don't have that large heart that, okay, my customer, my supplier or my vendor has raised a bill and he has smiled at me, I'm going to pay him immediately. Le jaiye. No, it should not happen. So the contract says that he's going to get payment in 60 days, means 60 days, not less than that. So ensure that your trade payables are paid only in accordance with the contract terms, and then don't pay on a daily basis or on ad hoc basis. So for example, you could have a policy that the weekly run will happen. So only on every Monday, the payment cycle is going to get processed. So if you look at all the MNCs like Pernod Ricard or HUL and all, they will have this strict payment runs. It's not, there's no concept of ad hocism there. Everything will happen as per the calendar. You don't even have to follow up as a vendor. You've raised an invoice within 60 days. On the 60th date, the payment is going to come. So that brings a lot of professionalism into the system, and you might feel very good. Then you could look at your market leverage against often, like for example, in the current crisis, you can say that, hey, business is not there for the last 2 months. Can you extend my payment terms? And this happens through mutual consent. Then if you look at invoice financing, that is a very interesting term. So businesses offering credit terms to their customers. Invoice financing is nowadays happening. It's based on, you get a percentage of value, which is like, if I were to get 1 crore rupees from Tata Steel, 3 months from now, this is what I have supplied to them. Today, I'll get like 2% less. So 98 lakhs I can get from Axis Bank today itself. And then after 3 months, Tata Steel is going to pay Axis Bank directly. So this is what is known as invoicing finance. So factoring includes credit control. So you know that these are people who are credit worthy, and smaller companies where the value of invoice is lower, that happens. And then large companies will also follow aspects like discounting and selective invoice financing. So smaller companies will follow factoring, larger companies are going to follow discounting and selective invoice factoring. There's something called trade finance and supply chain finance. So trade finance and supply chain finance just happens in the same as invoice finance. So basically, wherever your physical stock rather than services rendered, you will have trade finance and supply chain finance. So go to any FMCG company or any large scale auto company or a manufacturing company, you'll have a lot of physical stock, right? So that you kind of optimize using supply chain finance. So for example, at Aditya Birla, we import a lot of mining machinery from Japan. So then we get something called supplier's credit, which is that the Komatsu, which is like the mining manufacturer machinery, they will extend me some credit period, which is far more beyond. And that is going to happen through a Singapore-based financing agent who says, hey, I know this Aditya Birla Group, they are going to pay in 6 months. Let me pay you the amount right away. I will take it from Aditya Birla after 6 months. So this is like a 3-party agreement which happens. And it's quite interesting. So supply chain finance is a mutually beneficial agreement based on the credit worthiness of buyers, which is like Aditya Birla Group in this case, where the buyer can delay payment for longer. And the supplier gets payment from the lender immediately. And the payment delay is shouldered by the lender rather than the supplier. So it is like the intermediate bank which says, okay, I'm going to wait for 6 months. Of course, they're going to build cost in that. And trade finance is slightly more complicated. It's international trade that happens. So you like have a prepayment for shipment of goods from overseas manufacturer. Then what is TREADS? Now, if you were to just Google search about this, you find that this is a very interesting mechanism which has been set up by the government to facilitate trade receivables financing of MSMEs. So when there are like MSMEs and the buyer is like a corporate, an Asian Paints, a Pidilite, a PepsiCo, in that case, that MSME has an option to go to this platform and get the receivables into liquid funds. Right, so that's called TREADS. So this concept was introduced by Reserve Bank of India in 2014 as a mechanism of trade receivables financing for MSMEs on a secure digital platform. Just after this session, you can go and figure out what is TREADS. And there are a lot of startups, of those who are entrepreneurial in nature in this seminar. You can actually nowadays look at this. So invoice discounting is a big thing now, where what happens is that I need to just, for example, this is a platform called CredX, where you just sign up on CredX, you upload invoices, and within 24 to 72 hours, they're going to discount your invoices and put the money into your bank account through an RTGS. Everything is online. You're not going to give any collateral. You're just going to say, okay, I have a right to receive 1 crore from Tata Steel after 3 months. Can you pay the present value to me right away? And these companies are more than happy to do that because they earn some interest in the market. Plus, if you're looking at MSMEs, they have a lot of working capital limits. So the 3 most frequently used government schemes are for MSMEs, which is known as Credit Guarantee Fund for Micro and Small Enterprises. Then you've got the Mudra loans and you've got the Stand Up India scheme. So under the first scheme, you've got a collateral-free credit fund and non-fund based extended by eligible financial institutions up to a limit of 2 crores. And the government gives like a guarantee of 85% for micro enterprises for credit up to 5 lakhs and 50% of the sanction amount for credit ranging from 10 lakhs to 100 lakhs as per the MSME borrower for the retail trade activity. So this is a very interesting scheme. So this is called CGTMSE, which you can actually use in your business. And then you've got this Mudra scheme, which is the ticket size, of course, smaller, like 10 lakhs. But in terms of working capital, this can be a huge boost to you. So you can just try to see how you can avail this. And then yesterday, the government introduced as part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, a scheme where they're going to give like 3 lakh crores of collateral-free automatic loans to businesses, including MSMEs. So what is the criteria for that? Businesses who've been hit by COVID-19, they need additional funding for the operational liabilities to restart. So they've got like 25 crores outstanding. That is the limit. Your turnover should be less than 100 crores. You have a loan, so that you'll now get it for 4 years. Moratorium will be 1 year. So for 1 year, you don't have to pay the principal, just the interest. Interest will be capped at a limit. The government is going to give you 100% credit guarantee on the principal and the scheme. No guarantee fee, no fresh collateral.
So now introducing in front of you all, CA Ankit Patwari. He's a chartered accountant by profession and he's also our faculty for the last 5 years in the college. And he's a St. Xavier's graduate. He's working in the chartered accountancy consultancy field for the last 7 years, and he has also mentored 10,000 plus students in and out college. So here we welcome Ankit Patwari sir. He will take over from here.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Dean sir, for giving us an opportunity to. This is my first webinar. I'm doing it. It is a great opportunity for me to conduct the session. I'm highly obliged. And thank you, Anurag sir, for sharing such a valuable knowledge for all of us. And thank you all the program coordinators, Mohit Shaw sir, Vivek sir, and my co-speaker Preeti ma'am, and for organizing such a wonderful event. So without wasting any time, first of all, let me share the screen first. As far as my knowledge is concerned, what we are going to do, unless and until we don't have a practical knowledge of that subject, we will not be able to understand the twist and the turns which happens in daily life or the practical life. So let me first take you to the syllabus of SEM 6, because whatever we will be discussing, we will try to discuss it through the curriculum which we have, right? So in SEM 6, basically, the chapter working capital is divided into two sections. Both the section has 10 marks each. So that totals up to 20 marks. And if you see the overall percentage, it is 80 marks is a full syllabus. So you can see that this particular chapter is 25% of your entire curriculum. Now, there will be some students who will be asking, sir, if I do this 25% of the syllabus, okay, fine, I'll go through with my exam. I will be go through with my exam, but will I gain the full knowledge of this working capital management? No, because whatever is there in your syllabus, this is just the basic of working capital management. Working capital management itself is a subject. It is, since it is there in your syllabus as a chapter, it is there as a, you can study it as a subject. There are a lot of things, as Anurag sir understand, you need to apply it regular basis, right? So what I will be doing, I will be just giving you an idea about the subject, and there are some few more things that we can do with the subject. So let us move on with the slide. This part, Anurag sir has explained us that working capital is basically the difference between current asset and current liabilities. What is management? Management means managing things in a better way. So you need to follow 3 E's. There are 3 E's. One is economic. Second one is efficiency. The third one is effectiveness. Whenever you talk about working capital management, it's what? Basically, it's managing current assets, and you have to be following this 3E concept. That is, one, economy. Second is efficiency. The third one is effectiveness, right? So let me take you to the concept of this working capital. Basically, working capital can be classified in many ways. You can calculate it on the basis of value, or you can calculate it on the basis of time. As you can see in the slide, if I have to think from the basis of value, then it can be classified into gross and net. So gross working capital is basically the summation of all current assets. The moment you subtract current liabilities, you get net working capital. So this is on the basis of value. Now on the basis of time, what is permanent and temporary working capital? This is the minimum working capital which you require for your business. This is the minimum working capital for which we require for your business in order to carry out your day-to-day activities. And what is this temporary working capital? It basically depends upon, suppose if I'm getting an extra offer from the customer. So in order to fulfill that extra offer, I have to make arrangements for extra raw material, extra manpower, I have to pay overtime charges. So in that case, the extra working capital required to finance the business is known as temporary working capital. So in the next slide, you can see that the permanent working capital is basically, it's a type of fixed cost, that this is the minimum amount required to carry out my production, which is taking place evenly throughout the year. And this is the variable capital, which is the temporary capital. It depends upon additional offers which I am getting from the customer. So now I will be discussing about few management of working capital, and there are issues in managing working capital. You must have studied in your semester 2 material cost and control, right? Over there we have learned that we should not do excessive investment in inventory. The moment you do excessive investment in inventory, it means that you're overstocking. There is an over capitalization. So high storage space you require, there will be high finance required, there will be high risk of obsolescence. So as a result of which, what is happening, your carrying cost or the stock holding cost is increasing. Sir, let us get over with the situation. Let us try to have small working capital. This is also having an adverse effect. If you have small working capital, then there are high chances of stock out. There are high chances of stock out. So over there, we try to establish an equilibrium between this excessive investment and under investment. We should keep adequate investment so that our business activities, as Anurag sir said, that we need to optimize this C2C, cash to conversion cycle, right? Then how can you do? He told us that you can follow just in time if my vendors are near me. Further, you can go and follow EOQ model, right? You can have new machineries, right, whose processing time is faster. So there are different ways you can minimize that C2C cycle. You can offer cash discount policy to the customer, right? Say 2/10 net 30. Now what does it mean? 2/10 net 30. Say normal credit period is 30 days. If you pay within 10 days, then I will give you 2% ka cash discount. So in order to gain this 2% ka benefit, the customer will be eager to pay us early. So in these ways, I can reduce my operating cycle duration, and accordingly, the moment there are so many business where working capital is not required because they have generally cash sales, they don't have stock positions. So in that cases, your working capital requirement will be very less. So basically in your subject, you will be taught that how to find out the optimum working capital, right? You should not be doing over capitalization, you should not be doing under capitalization. Now basically now I'm going to link this working capital because the topic for today is efficient development with the help of ratio analysis. In your +2 level, many of you might have heard the word short-term solvency ratios, right? That is basically I'm talking about liquidity ratio. If someone tells you that my current ratio is 4 means my current assets are 4 times of my current liability, right? Now this is a clear-cut case of excessive investment when your current asset is more than 2. Now sir, what is this 2? Because many financial institutions, banks, they consider current ratio 2 as standard. Okay, fine, you have a current ratio of 2, you are a very good, you are maintaining an optimum liquidity. The moment you are showing that I have huge current assets, I am giving huge protection to my creditor, that simply gives an indication that there is an excessive investment. On the other hand, if current ratio is 1 or 0.6, in that case you are showing that there might be a risk of insolvency, that you may not be able to pay your current liabilities. If I have a current ratio of less than 1, it clearly shows that my current assets are less than my current liabilities, so I might run into the risk of insolvency. Now whenever you talk about liquidity, you should not be focusing only on short term, you have to be thinking from the survival from the long term perspective. Many of you have this subject financial management. See, whenever I'm talking, I'm taking reference so that I can make you aware that whatever you study in your curriculum, that is going to be applied when you go in the industry. So you need to be careful that whatever we have studied, it is important for us. Now whenever you take investment decision, basically investment decision means buying land and building, installing plant and machinery, making furniture and all, but that does not serve your purpose. Suppose I bought a land, then I installed the machinery, I had the furniture, now I am left with no money. From next day morning I will have profit kya? No, because for making profit I need to start production. So whenever you borrow, you need to make sure that you are left something so that you can purchase raw material, you can make labor payment, right? So accordingly you can produce and sell. Like this the business cycle goes on. So basically the issue in working capital management is over capitalization and under capitalization. I need to maintain a balance between these two and find out my optimum working capital. Now there are so many determinants which Anurag sir has already spoken about, that how much cash you require in order to meet your day-to-day activities. There are few cash management models which is not there in your syllabus. William J. Baumol's model, Miller-Orr model, right? In these models, whenever there is an excess cash, so that point, right, like in EOQ, in material cost, we had maximum stock level and minimum stock level concept. So similarly in cash management models, you have this concept of maximum cash and minimum cash. Whenever the cash level goes that minimum level, it gives you an indication that you should go for bank overdraft or you should obtain cash credit from the financial institution. The moment the cash exceeds that maximum point, it clearly shows that it's a sign of temporary investment. Further, another determinant is inventory, which I've already spoken about, just-in-time approach. Receivables, identifying your appropriate credit policies, giving cash discount policies. As Anurag said, already spoken about this factoring part, that whenever you require funds and whenever I have to minimize the cash operating cycle duration, I can go for factoring. I can go for pledging. Now pledging is basically, it's a loan against your debtors. What bank will do? Bank will just take you the list of your debtors from you, and bank will analyze, okay, fine, these customers are not currently overdue, so tick them. These customer past payment period do not exceed the average payment period, tick it. So bank will select only those debtors only. If customers are currently overdue, bank will not select that. If past payment period of that particular customer exceeded the average, bank will not consider. So bank is going to provide us loan only on our good debtors. Nature of business, in case of restaurant, we have cash sales and all, then market demand, operating efficiency, like that. Now we need to maintain a balance between liquidity and profitability. Higher inventory, your stock out will be low, your profitability will be high, but there will be overstocking. So this is the balance that you need to maintain between liquidity and profitability. With respect to these, all are there in your curriculum. These are the different items of current asset and current liability, on the basis of which the downside and the upside has been explained, and you need to find out the optimum point. This is very important for your curriculum. This particular section is for 10 marks. The approaches of working capital, there are different types of approach you can follow. You can go for aggressive approach, you can go for moderate approach, you can go for conservative approach. Another, I will take an example of some ratio and try to explain you what are the different approaches speaks about. Basically, this is the diagram. You can see that we will try to establish a relationship between our current asset and the fixed assets, right? Now, you can see that there is an illustration given here that you have a sales of around about 20 lakh, your EBIT is 2 lakh, your fixed asset is 5 lakh. Now, there are three possible current assets holding of the firm. We have 5 lakh, one case, second case is 4 lakh. So now we will find out one ratio between current asset and fixed asset, right? This is a very important ratio which is used to identify the optimum working capital. So if I case the case of 5 lakh, then in that case you will find that current asset is to fixed asset is 1. Second case, 4 lakh by 5 lakh. So in that case you can find 0.8. Then it is 3 lakh by 5 lakh. In that case you can find 0.6, right? So what are the effects? Now you can easily see that in all the cases, my EBIT is 2 lakh, irrespective of my investment in working capital, my EBIT is 2 lakh. Now, if I want to have, so I can get my total investment by adding my asset side. So in first case, my total asset is 10 lakh. In second case, it is 9 lakh. In aggressive case, it is 8 lakh. So what is the return on total assets formula? This is very important ratio which is used. It is also commonly known as return on capital employed. So basically, return on total asset is EBIT by total asset. So in first case, we are having 20%. Moderate case, we are having 22.2%. Aggressive, we are having 25%. Now you can see that conservative approach means I am afraid of stock out. So I will keep maximum investment in my working capital. So in that case, you can see that your current investment in working capital is very high, but your profitability is low, 20% only. If I go by aggressive approach, means my investment in working asset is less. So in that case, I might achieve the profitability. I have the highest profitability, but my risk of getting stock out is very high, right? I might get stock out at any point of time. So what I will try to do, I will try to maintain an equilibrium between these two approaches. So this explanation has been given that moderate policy generates higher return than conservative, but lower than aggressive. And this is less risky than aggressive, but riskier than conservative, right? Now, management of working capital has two parts. One is the investment, another one is the financing. So this was the investment part. We need to find out the optimum quantum of working capital. Now, we'll be talking about the financing part of working capital. So there are two types of sources. One is spontaneous, which you don't have to seek from. It is automatically, that is credit period supplied, bills payable, accrued. And negotiable sources, these you have to argue. These you have to get arrangement with your lenders. As we spoke about bill discounting, public deposits, factoring, right? These are the common forms of bank credit which you can get against your working capital: cash credit, bank overdraft, bills discounting, bill acceptance, line of credit, letter of credit, bank guarantees, right? And this is a very famous maximum permissible bank finance, that how much finance you can get against your working capital. It was set up by RBI in 1974 under the chairmanship of Mr. Tandon, right? So there are three ways you can calculate your maximum permissible bank finance. Basically, it focused that 25% should be funded from long-term sources, and the remaining you can fund from bank borrowings, that is bank overdraft, right? And this is basically the working capital cycle. I have already told you how to reduce the ways of the working capital cycle. So thank you so much for giving such a patient hearing. I hope the session was quite interesting and it was knowledgeable for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit sir, for such a valuable feedback and session for us. Now we will introduce Preeti Modi ma'am. As all of you know, she is our faculty for the last 6 years now, and she is a upcoming sensational motivational speaker. She has a channel in YouTube where she is posting regular motivational videos, and she has also authored a book recently, No Stopping You. So now this part of the session is very important. Preeti Modi ma'am will showcase you a project about working capital, how it is prepared. So please kindly follow it. Over to you, Preeti ma'am.
Thank you, Vivek sir, for such a wonderful introduction. And Ankit sir and Anurag sir has been a delight to hear. And wonderful insights from Anurag sir's point of view, the industry, and Ankit sir definitely from the curriculum point of view. I'll take you over to the working capital project. This is a sample project for working capital. I hope the screen is visible to all. Vivek sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So it's a sample project, working capital done by an student of our school, of our college. The format, you must have all started the project work by now, as the Dean sir had announced just an hour back that the last date for submission is 25th of May. So I hope, at least 50% of the project is done. Chapter 1 carries 6 portions, as you all can see: the background, the objective of study, the need for study, the limitations, the literature review, and research methodology. Chapter 1 carries 10 marks. Chapter 2 is conceptual framework, where you write detail about working capital. Chapter 3 and Chapter 2 carries 5 marks only. Chapter 3, you have data analysis and finding, the most important part of your project, which carries 25 marks. And the last portion is the conclusion, which carries 10 marks. So introduction is 10 marks, chapter 2 it's 5, chapter 3 is 25, and chapter 4 it's 10. Now the students, they concentrate more on chapter 2 because they have plenty to write about, the detail what they write about in chapter 2, because what they have to do is copy paste from Google, Wikipedia, from all the sources. That is the reason why chapter 2 becomes quite bulky. Remember, chapter 2 carries only 5 marks. It will fetch you very little mark even if you write in detail. So concentrate more on chapter 3. So we have one, the background is given, you write about working capital. You can get information from various books, from various websites. Then you have your objectives of study. What are you trying to find out from this particular topic? Anurag sir had given an insight about the working capital matrix. That was quite an important insight about various industries and the various countries. That itself can be a topic. Or you can select a company and compare it with another similar type of an industry. In this particular project, we are concentrating on Infosys. Infosys, as you all know, is a tech company, is an IT company. You need to understand that the working capital requirement for an IT company will be different as from a trading company and different for a manufacturing company. So when you take up companies, you cannot compare Infosys with, say, ITC. You need to compare Infosys with Cognizant. And if you need to compare ITC, taking up an ITC company, you compare that with HUL. So the industry will have to be similar. Students do the mistake over here of selecting 2 different industries. Obviously, the working capital requirement will be different. So the objectives are there. You need to have 4-5 objectives. Need for study, what is your need? To why are you doing the project? Limitations, your limitations. If you're doing secondary, if you're using secondary data, obviously you're not using the primary one, that becomes a limitation, and vice versa. So you have plenty of limitations, and obviously you all can state that because of COVID-19, the pandemic, you had to virtually discuss supervisors, so that was a limitation. So you placed the limitation accordingly, but put one-page limitations. The person taking your viva will be like, okay, so the student has faced only problems and less of solutions. So keep your limitations to the minimum, and obviously problems will be there. Keep it to 3-4 points maximum. And then literature review, you can get it from Google. Literature review is the only portion where we tell our students to cut, copy, paste. Don't use your brain, just cut, copy, paste in literature review. Do not change anything in literature review. And then research methodology, whether it's a primary data or a secondary data. Now for working capital, mainly students will focus on doing the secondary research, taking information from the internet and doing their ratio analysis. If you intend to do a primary research, you need to take questionnaires from top management personnel, which might be difficult in COVID-19 time, or Google Sheet is there. If you can have a primary research, you can. But taking a secondary research would be preferable, but again, it's completely up to you. In this particular project, the student had taken secondary research. This carried the 6 points of chapter 1 carries 10 marks, and you will be asked questions in your viva about the chapter 1 also. So you need to be through with your chapter 1. I am not coming much into chapter 2 because it's mainly copy paste from Google, because you write all the Gyan portion over here. The working capital, kinds of working capital, gross, net working capital. You have various graphs over here, components of working capital, any other data which you feel would fit into this chapter, you're free to use. But don't make this chapter too lengthy. As I said earlier, it carries only 5 marks. You have this significance of working capital, whatever you want to write, and then coming to your chapter, coming to your topic. Over here, the good thing is the student have said India, and then it has stated about USA, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand also. In chapter 2, you have a portion called national and international scenario. That is important because that will fetch you 5 marks. So you need to have the national and international scenario in your chapter 2. So make sure you write those portions. You will get it from internet. Chapter 3, data analysis and finding. 20 marks coming to it. You write about the industry, the profile, brief profile, whichever company you are selecting. You might select one company, you might select 2 companies, you might select 3 companies, but one company has to be the main company. And then the other one or the other 2 companies are the ones which, you're comparing it. So make sure the company which you're choosing is a company which you can get data on, because students, they, get haphazard data and then everything goes haywire. The student over here has given the shareholding of Infosys, the pie chart. They have the student has given the PL statement and the balance sheet over here, cash flow statement. If you wish, you can give. If you wish, you can avoid it also. But I would prefer you all to give the data, the balance sheet, PL, cash flow, because it will be easier for the external to do some calculations if they wish to check whether you have done it correctly or not. So giving the various data, you just need to copy paste, but yes, make sure that you write the source over here. Anurag Singhal sir had stressed on the portion, whenever he was having a data over there, he was stating, it's from EY report. So you need to state the sources in your project. Without sources, your marks will be deducted, and the reliability of data will be questioned. So better you write the source from where you are getting the data. You will get it from moneycontrol.com or the company website, the balance sheet page, everything will be available. So just write the source below. Coming to the ratio analysis and interpretation. See, in this particular portion, you need to have the various ratio calculations. Which ratios? If you're doing working capital ratios, make sure you're calculating the working capital ratios only. Total current asset, total current liability, net working capital. Table, as you can see, table 3.1. Students make an error of making a table say 6.1 or say 11.1. If this is chapter 3, it has to be 3.1. It cannot be 1.1, it cannot be 2.1, it cannot be 5.1. It has to be 3.1. This is the place where students make an error. Then you can see by way of a bar graph, the working capital figure has been displayed, and then the interpretation is there. Ankit sir stated about current ratio. He gave an example. The current ratio is 4. This means you have 4 times current assets, which is not required. Or if you have 1 or say 0.6, Ankit sir has quoted, and he was interpreting it. That interpretation is extremely important. So if you are studying for your final year, the working capital chapter, and you know what the interpretation means, what the figure means, you need to give the interpretation in your project also. Very aptly said, if it's 4, it means current ratio is quite high, and the investment in debtors and stock is quite high, and the money is stuck, and it cannot be lower or say less than 0, because that shows that the company is not in a good position to pay off its creditors. So that way you need to be clear in the interpretation portion. This will show that you are thorough with your portion. See, we have the current ratio. Again, the table, current ratio 4.05, 3.97, 3.18. The data over here is for till the year 2017. Please do not use for quite an old year. Latest one has to be 2019. It is available, in the company's website, in moneycontrol.com or any other website. So please use current year. Do not use obsolete data. So we have the current ratio over here, then the graph, and then the interpretation. So every ratio will have 3 parts: the table, the graph, and finally the interpretation. That is why it carries 25 marks. Ratio, same table, graph, and interpretation. So for every working capital ratio, you need to have these things: debtors turnover ratio, then you have creditors turnover ratio, and so on. Cash management ratio, cash to net working capital. These ratios need to be done by you. Remember, you're doing a project on working capital. You cannot have, debt equity ratio in this particular portion. If the topic is ratio analysis, definitely you can have debt equity ratio. But if you're having working capital ratio, do not keep ratio, do for portions other than for working capital, current assets and current liability, because that gives a bad impression that you don't know what working capital is. So do only portions relating to working capital. And after having those graphs, around 6-7 minimum ratios you should be able to find out. And finally you come to conclusion, where you conclude and give your recommendations. Recommendations would be on the portions of your interpretations. Say the current ratio has, it has risen over the years, which is the company, about the company. The debtor turnover ratio has declined gradually. So if it has declined gradually, whether the company is not giving enough credit period, or the company's cash ratio is bad or good, all those recommendations you need to give to the company. It's recommendations. Don't be bossy over here. You need to write in points that these are your recommendations for better performance of the company. And then you have the bibliography. And this carries 10 marks. chapter, this recommendation portion carries a greater portion, definitely, because it states how thorough you are with your portion. This is the way how you need to do your 100 marks EDP project, 50 marks for the project, 50 marks for the Viva. If the 50 marks is taken care of, if you're doing it quite well, I suppose the remaining 50% for your Viva will be taken care quite easily. That is all from my side. Thank you. I hope the content was useful for the students.
Mohit sir, you want to speak something on working capital? Please go ahead.
First of all, good evening to everyone. Working capital is supposed to be the most important aspect of any business organization because it is very easy to start a business, but it is very difficult to survive. जितना ये एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से इम्पोर्टेंट है उतना ही प्रैक्टिकली ये इम्पोर्टेंट रहा है बिकॉज फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ यू वांट टू स्टार्ट अ टी स्टॉल राइट you can definitely have a shop, one time investment, then you can definitely have a gas stove and everything in place. But if you don't have money to buy working capital for daily basis, that's milk, sugar and other requirements, you will not be able to run the shop. So it is not only always about the capital assets, but it's always about working capital. And the current scenario in the COVID situation where people are going lack of liquidity and cash crunch, the management of working capital becomes very important. Rightly stated by Ankit sir as well, over inventory is again another reason why majority of organizations fail to survive. Like when you start having food, excesses of food makes you feel uncomfortable. The same goes with working capital as well. You need to have a standardized diet for the business, how much to store, how much to invest, and how much to release. So from practical aspect as well, in the times to come, as someone asked that which industry is going to have a boom after COVID, first of all, I believe barbers are going to definitely have a boom in the industry. And a lot of us, you can also have a look at me. And I'm waiting for the lockdown to get removed so that I can visit a salon nearby, right? Jokes apart, but working capital is going to be the most effective portion, especially when it comes at BCom graduates or chartered accounting aspirants. We are the main person who works on it. Compared to other graduates of other stream, we have an upper hand over there. So understanding this chapter from academic point of view is also very important in comparison to practical point of view. So that's the upper hand what we have on a daily basis as well. The concept of this chapter is going to help us a lot. First of all, thanks a lot to Vivek Patwari sir for making me a co-coordinator for this event. To all the speakers, Anurag sir, Ankit Patwari sir, Preeti Modi ma'am, for being there and enlightening students from the academics point of view. Definitely, yes, students who are still there are just because कि exam में आने वाला है, important है, बस pass हो जाएंगे. That is the most utmost requirement. But I believe in the present scenario and after the COVID situation, this is the need of the hour, and we must understand the utility. And in the 6th sem, I have also come across a number of people those who have started their own business, and they were asking sir how to maintain, how to survive. Because I do understand for startups, it's very difficult to survive in a situation where we don't have any revenue. And कितने लोगों को तो working capital अभी back end में पड़े हुए होंगे and कुछ कर नहीं पा रहे हैं. So I think Ankit Patwari sir and Preeti Modi ma'am and Anurag Singhal sir can definitely help you out with it. And Ankit sir is going to ask a good amount of money for that, as far I know. With this, I believe I will now over to our dynamic dean sir, Dilip Shah sir from here to provide the concluding speech. Over to you, Dilip sir.
So today, I'm sure that all of you all must have been enriched with a lot of insights from Anurag Singhal and Ankit Patwari and finally Preeti Modi. I could not be present when Preeti spoke, but I heard Ankit and I heard Anurag first. There is a beautiful line in English as it comes, and it comes to my mind that the melodies that we heard, that is Anurag and Ankit, was sweet indeed. The melodies that we heard were sweet indeed, but the one unheard was probably sweeter.
Yes, sir. Agree.
That's why you, Preeti.
Yes, sir.
So I think all of you all had a good time. Great. We'll have more such opportunities. Anurag, we'll definitely involve you more often.
Sure, sir.
Boys, thank you all for being here. I'm sure all of them must have come to know about the various things that are coming up. So anyway, thank you all very much. That's it from my side.